My health world, namaste, enlightenment.
Namaste, welcome back. We are here for episode 4. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who have watched My Health World podcast episode 1, 2, and 3, we really appreciate you watching and listening to everything that beautiful Carrie-Anne, who is here with me today, and I have to say, everything that we have to share, everything that we feel is something which is really appropriate to be discussing in 2020. So if you haven't already, please go back and watch episode 1, 2, and 3. It's not, I mean, what do you think, Harry? It's not necessary that you watch them in order, but I guess in some way it is. It's almost like if you do our level 1 teacher training, you don't have to do the modules in order, but sometimes it's nice to kind of start at that grassroots level and then grow with the consciousness evolution. So please go back and watch episode 1, 2, and 3 if you haven't yet. But we are here for episode 4. Gosh, time is flying. We're going to talk a little bit about time today and what exactly it is. But our theme for today, I'll hand it over to Carrie-Anne, who's going to introduce what we are talking about today. I bet you're all sitting there going, gosh, what are these guys going to come up with this week?
Yeah, I do think maybe it's good to listen to episode 1, 2, and 3 because we're getting into some deeper concepts around being multidimensional, what that means. But if this is your first time listening to us, it's meant to be you'll pick up the seeds of wisdom that we're dropping. Sometimes these concepts we have to allow it just to soak in on a vibrational level because we are talking about vibration. We are talking about energy. We don't need to take it in with the mind. The mind is very 3D, isn't it, Greg? You know, the mind really is attuned to matter, and we are more a wave particle. So we've got the matter particle, we've got the wave particle. We are actually more the wave particle, meaning we are more energy. So if we look at ourselves as quantum beings, if we look at the science of quantum physics, not that I need science to prove these things. The more I go along in my journey, I just trust my own inner knowing. But science is great for those who need that breakdown. So we are more wave particle, and we really want to get in today about how you can access yourself as that energetic, multidimensional being. We're going to put the dots really closely together. We're going to give you the tools to dive deep within that reservoir of peace that resides within you so that you're not listening to the antics of the mind, because left unchecked, the mind is a saboteur. The mind is going to lead you into places that you really don't want to go. And no amount of affirming what you want will make any difference if you haven't become the master of your mind. Meaning if you don't have the ability to switch off the mind chatter at will, the mind is going to create your reality coupled with the vibration that you're holding within. And this is why affirmations are wonderful if the vibration within is peaceful, and then you will have instant manifestation of exactly what it is that you're hoping for. But if your vibration is that of turbulence, fear, anxiety, and then you create an affirmation of something that you're wanting to manifest, it's never going to come to you because the vibration, the energetic structure within you is more entrenched in that fear-based reality. So we want to talk about breath work today. We want to talk about the bandhas. It's a term we use in yoga, but they're energetic seals of energy, breath, I guess.
Of prana, yeah, seals of prana.
It brings the kundalini upwards through the spinal column. It helps you to tap into that pineal gland. We go on and on about the pineal gland in these podcasts because it is your internal technology that can transmit for you, can broadcast for you what you'd like to create, but it can also receive your energetic blueprint, if you like, your consciousness, your universal self will come pouring in.
And even light codes. So we talk at the moment about light codes coming through, upgrades coming through. If pineal gland is a little too scientific for you, it's also known as third eye chakra. In Chinese medicine, it is a point on the Du meridian. So there's actually a couple of ways that we can explain the pineal gland and its function. But whether or not you're talking about it in terms of the endocrine system, so that would be the master hormone regulator of the pineal gland, or third eye chakra, which is our intuition, our connection, it's our wisdom. It's in Chinese medicine, it helps to control a lot of the yang function in the body. So it's something which at the moment, a lot of people are awakening to.
Exactly. And once the pineal gland is really attuned and functioning well for you, you are transmitting energy out there, as I said, and you're receiving universal energy in there. So you can see concentric circles going out from your body, your being, if you like, going out into the cosmos. And then at the same time, that cosmic energy is reverberating back in and funneling in through the crown chakra down into that pineal gland. And then you're transmitting out again. So really, it's a master gland, and you can create your own reality. And because we have a very narrow and tunneled view of what reality actually is, this is why we're saying listen to our other podcasts, but because we're theming a lot at the moment of what's going on with the COVID hoax. And that's not to say that COVID isn't real. It's more talking about the fact that the measures around the COVID
that's exactly right.
situation is not in alignment with the statistics around who's contracting it and who's passing over from it. So we know all that. The world's woken up to that one. But basically we're talking about those Illuminati structures, the elite, the 1% who hold 50% of the wealth. They got the same 50% of the wealth as the lower echelon, the lower 50% echelon of the population. So that's an extraordinary fact. I mean, really let that soak in, because that could just be words that I'm saying. But if you understand the gravity of that, you know there's a complete imbalance on this planet. If these people really cared about us, they would be giving up their hordes and hordes and hordes of money to people who are starving. But they're not. So we actually know...
No, and it's interesting, isn't it, how they appear to be. So when you look at some of the charities and some of the missionary work, which appears to be so, generous and so giving, but again, in a proportionary scale, it's basically pointless. It's almost, it's almost not even enough to throw a stone into the ocean or a droplet into the ocean. So then we question, well, what exactly is the motivation? Even though the big website says we want to end world hunger, I remember I thought about that in probably 3 or grade 4 when I started doing the World Vision, whatever we call it, 40-hour famine back then. And I started thinking, but hang on, how could my $2 donation have any chance of helping when, look at the bigger picture, look at the people who have these incredible amounts of wealth behind them. And if we do it in a proportionary way, then realistically, we could get things under control relatively quickly.
It's so true. And just to go on with that little side note, that little tangent, that it's been discovered that they may give $1 million, which in our world's a lot of money. So they'll give $1 million to a charity, but then they receive $12 million back through what they're rolling out, through their pharmaceuticals, through their vaccinations. So yeah, the balance really isn't there at all. But what we want to talk about is that we have this very tunneled vision of what reality is. Greg spoke about it in the last podcast about, getting stuck in that cycle of working 9 to 5 for 60, 70 years, maybe not that long, I suppose, up to that age we may be working. And then, unfortunately, because we've been eating in an unhealthy way just to cope, probably drinking too much just to cope, or other substances, then we contract some kind of illness, some kind of dis-ease, and then we're battling until our last breath. So we actually haven't woken up to the bliss, the ecstatic wave that's available here on this planet as human beings. So we're wanting to broaden our horizons. And when we know that the third eye can really work for us to create any possibility, any reality, and that we are the master, we are the creator, we take our power back, then the world is our oyster, as we say, and we can create anything. And of course we're going to create bliss, of course we're going to create peace, of course we're going to create abundance. And for those people who are benevolent, and those are the people who are listening to us, you want to make sure that everyone's included in that ecstatic wave, that everyone's receiving the abundance, the joy, the peace, the love, the fun, the sharing of cultures where there's no judgment. That is what we are here to create. That is the light being community coming together at this moment, standing up, feeling the power erupt out of them and just saying to the Illuminati, I'm not bloody having it anymore. I will not acquiesce. I will not bow down. I'm standing up. You know, it doesn't matter what the consequences are, because the consequences are worse if we don't stand up right here, right now. So, you know, as we do rave on, Greg, but back to that question of what are we theming today? We're calling this the spiritual battle. I want to talk about the battle of the bastards in the Game of Thrones, for those people who love Game of Thrones, because if you think about the character of Ramsay Bolton in Battle of the Bastards, he was the most evil prick that you've ever encountered, beyond anything that you could absolutely imagine. And this is what we're talking about. We need to stand up to evil. And in the Battle of the Bastards, and we thought there's no way that Jon Snow and the Light team were going to be triumphant, but there was backup. And we've got to understand, and this is what we're talking about as multidimensional beings, we've got to understand there's an incredible amount of backup. You've got to talk to your angels, you've got to talk to your guides, you've got to talk to ascended masters, you've got to talk to, you know, we talked about our star home, we've done the starseed meditation now on My Whole TV. You've got to call them in, guys. It's time. Time. Take it away, Greg. Tell me more about
It's
those
interesting
high
when we
beings.
say the 1%, look, these figures, whether or not they're completely accurate, who really cares? But if we say, for example, 1% control 50% of the finances, the interesting thing is to flip that. We have 99% of the people who, when we are awakened, we have the power, because the only way that we could be controlled by a tiny population of people with the most money is if we believe that there is a connection there between money and control. So as soon as we release that, as soon as we go, okay, cool, let's let that evaporate, then we recognize that we actually have the people power. We have them outnumbered absolutely entirely. Not when it comes to finances, but then what do we need our finances for? How long has cash been around for? How long has money been around for? Humans have been around a lot longer than that, and they'll probably outlive it. They're already talking about becoming a cashless society, just so we can have even more control over us and over, you know, the 99% of the rest of us. You know, we don't have much money, but we still have to be tracked, and where are we spending and what are we doing with it and everything else. So interestingly, when we talk about the third eye, which is so important, the third eye becomes more than just our portal, but the third eye becomes the chakra or the gland, which allows us to upgrade and allows us to download. And those two words, which are probably pretty new to some of you because they're new to me this year, of course, we know about upgrades and downloads in the dictionary. You know, a lot of the time we talk about we've got to upgrade our car and we've got to download the new software on our iPhone. But realistically, these are words which relate to our DNA and they relate to our genetic makeup. We are no longer of the mind, and we no longer have to fall into the, I guess, belief that we are just creatures of our genetic code and we are stuck with it. You may have already heard of something called epigenetics, but we know now that genes can easily turn on and off, and genes are affected by our emotional state, our stress, our environment. And so it then becomes the question, well, are we choosing to sit back and just allow our genes to turn on and off? And are we allowing things to happen and then be out of our control? Or how can we, and we've talked a little bit already about the tools that we want to talk about today so that we can actually become masters of our own body and our own spirituality. How can we actually really tap into the upgrades and the downloads that are available? If we think of ourselves as a device, computer, iPhone, something like that, we want to be running the most current software, don't we? So this is the third eye. Now, there's going to be different ways that you can do that. For myself, at my acupuncture clinic, I use the acupuncture point on that dew meridian, which is located just here. It's also, as we said, the third eye chakra. So Balasana child's pose, massaging into this pose, even just bringing the awareness into this, not this pose rather, this chakra while we're meditating, while we're practicing asana is enough to activate it. But eventually it gets to the stage where you can just feel that activation constantly through the third eye. And it also, well, I mean, we often use the word third eye in yoga without actually thinking about what that means. You know, we throw around the term third eye, use your third eye, but it really is an eye. And in fact, it's an eye which can see a lot more than our eyes, because these ones All these are doing is noticing where light is reflecting off atoms, which we already recognize, they're already in the memory bank, feeding it through a couple of nerves and trying to tell the brain that that's probably what's going on. Now, our eyes are amazing, but our third eye is absolutely breathtaking in its abundance of what it can actually see, what it can sense, what it can predict. It's multidimensional as well. So the third eye can flip between dimensions, past, present, future, all at concurrent time frame in this time stamp. So the third eye, when it's truly activated and when you truly trust it, will be your savior. And this is one thing that we really need to get on top of as a society. There's different things which are coming out now, which are being shared. You can see them all over the social media and so on and so forth, about different chemicals, different substances, perhaps different pharmaceutical drugs, which actually close down the third eye, which switch off the third eye. We're not going to tell you what to do and what not to do, other than do your own research and make up your own mind. But be careful when you do make up your own mind that it's yours. So don't listen to us, and don't listen to your neighbor, and don't listen to Uncle Sam and who's saying do this and do this. No, do what's right for you. You've got to do the spiritual work though. So practice, get into yoga, get into your meditation. The time is now. And you'll start to notice when the third eye becomes activated that things start to change very quickly. Perhaps synchronicities, we call them divine synchronicities. You start to align a little bit better. You'll probably find that you are releasing burdens. It could be personal, professional relationships. It could be jobs. Things are starting to fall away. And again, if you look at the paradigm that we were brought up in, that will tell you that everything's wrong. I lost my job. I've lost my money. I've lost this. I've lost that. No, no, no. It's not about that. It's about releasing burdens and letting go of anything which is weighing you down in your human life. So interesting, we were talking earlier in the podcast about the paradigm which we were brought up in, particularly now for those of us who are alive in 2020, how regimented and how structured and how right and wrong everything has to be. You know, this is the year where political correctness is about to blow up like a volcano, because it's getting to the stage where we can't watch a single TV show, we can't look at any movies, we can't read any books, because there's every single word could possibly cause offense. And again, it's about saying who's wrong and who's right, who's wrong and who's right. We've got to have this really tunnel vision and be so scared and so controlled that we're unable to just be ourselves. The third eye does the opposite. The third eye doesn't get offended. The third eye doesn't worry about anything as juvenile as that, because the third eye is connected to that higher energy source. Well, the energy source, which is true love, peaceful vibration, where we don't have to manifest anyone who's out to get us or who's out to offend us. The third eye really is that manifestation of true self-love at a universal level. So let's chat a little bit, and Carrie Ann's going to help me now, but let's chat a little bit about some of the tools that we can incorporate into our daily rituals and to our daily habits to improve the third eye. And then we'll have a chat about who we are in this spiritual battle. So,
yeah, look, I mean, obviously, if you want to go deeper into the breathwork, you need to be doing a structured course like a yoga teacher training course, a pranayama breathwork course. We will put some third eye opening meditations on My Health TV as well to support this podcast. But essentially, just to keep it brief, and for those of you who are listening to this podcast as opposed to watching us on YouTube, what you can do is just inhale and expand your lower belly. So inhale through your nose, expand your lower belly, breathe the energy up, expand through the ribs, fill the chest as if the collarbones are rising, and then exhale and let it go again. And then you do a few rounds of this, and you want to make the breath very even. So full, deep, even, and flowing. And then we're going to inhale again. And this time we're going to hold the breath. In yoga, we call this kumbhaka. So it's the retention of breath. And then we're going to look inwards and upwards into the third eye chakra. So you close your eyes and you look inwards and upwards into that space. It's that seems like a hollow space sometimes. And other times we have a lot of activity, a lot of geometric patterns that come through. So, and then we exhale smoothly and evenly through both nostrils as soon as we're ready. And then we'll just repeat that another couple of times so that we're getting that expansion of breath. We're retaining the breath at the top of the inhalation. We're looking inwards and upwards into the third eye chakra. And then we're holding, we're relaxing our shoulders. The longer we can hold, the more we're going to propel that cerebral fluid that's in the spinal column upwards to drop into the third eye. So we're kind of going between the esoteric and the scientific as much as we can, depending on how you understand this. Of course, when you need to, you exhale. And you can do that again one more time while you're listening to Greg and I talk. But that's just very simple. There are more dynamic pranayama techniques that you can do. Breath of fire or Bastrika is a wonderful technique. And then you hold that breath at the end of that technique, and then you draw in the three main bandhas. So your bandhas are seals of energy, locks of energy. You draw from the perineum up to the navel, that's your Mula Bandha, and then you seal in from your solar plexus, fly it up behind your heart, Uddiyana Bandha, and then you've got your throat lock, so that's your throat drawing to your neck, Jalandhara Bandha. Now, sometimes you've just got to imagine that you're doing these. So at the top of the inhalation, you hold, you draw up those bandhas. It really propels the Kundalini energy upwards through the spine. It activates the pineal gland. Then when you do your exhalation, and you can now go back to your normal breathing, sometimes you get a bit of an anti-clockwise motion, or a rocking side to side or front to back through the spine. So this is an indication that the Kundalini energy has moved. Kundalini is symbolized by the dormant serpent laying at the base of the spine, laying at the Muladhara chakra, the base chakra. And when the awakening happens, we call that the spiritual awakening, the serpent arises and then it moves its way upwards through the chakras. So the endocrine system that Greg was referring to before, again, if you want to see it on the scientific level, the hormonal system, or you can see it in terms of pure energy, the chakras opening, connecting you to universal energy, universal frequency, until the serpent makes its way, and it crisscrosses. So Ida and Pingala nadis crisscross, intersect, of course, there at the crown chakra and illuminate, at the third chakra and illuminate the crown chakra. And this is where you then get the pouring of the universe, the pouring of the cosmos down into that funnel of the open crown. And then this explosion of light and energy in the third eye. And this is when you're in the ecstatic wave. So that you therefore are having more of an internal experience. As Greg said, we're using our eyes, our physical eyes, just to pick up, light waves out here. And we think that's reality, but actually it's a very, very small aspect of your reality. There's such a big process going on within you, this experience of your bliss, of your peace, of your joy, of your ecstasy. Once you awaken that third eye chakra, and then you are the creator. You create your reality, because remember what I said about your vibration? Your vibration then has shifted to the point then when you do an affirmation, or you do a prayer, or you ask for a wish, or you're setting a goal, it's coming at you like lightning speed, because you are vibrating at such a high frequency. So manifestation becomes very quick. Of course, you need to be very mindful what you're asking for at that time. If you've got an enemy and you say off with their head, when you're in that high vibrational energy, woo, you don't want to create that reality. So, but the thing is, anyone who's in that high vibrational reality is not going to ask for that, because they're experiencing their divine self. They're in cosmic bliss. So they only want the best for everyone. Even the so-called enemy is not an enemy, because at that point you realize that person activated you to grow spiritually. So it's all perfect. And we say that about the Illuminati. They're a perfect opponent. We needed them to wake humanity up.
To wake up.
As much as it's the battle of the bastards.
I think you just like saying that.
I do.
It's the country girl in you. I often discuss with students, trainees, patients here at the clinic about breathwork and how important it is. And there's something that we have to say, first of all. You're probably, if you haven't studied yoga, if you haven't studied pranayama, if you haven't meditated, you're probably not breathing to your full capacity. You're probably not used to it. There is a little bit of strength that's involved with the diaphragm, with the lungs. So we have our ribs as the bony structure that is the 3D structure that protects the organs in the thoracic cavity, in the chest. But in between each rib, we have little muscles. Now, the ribs are called costal joints, and then the muscles are the intercostals. So we've got this really exquisite structure that protects our heart. But if we're not used to taking deep breaths, then it becomes a little challenging when you first start. So if you do start a formal, and we said it before, pranayama, so it is the study of breath, study of prana. If you start a formal practice, don't expect when the teacher says inhale for 5, 4, 3, and you're like, I've got no more space. There's nothing wrong with you. It takes a while. It can take a long time. If you had childhood asthma, if you've had chronic illness, if you were a smoker, if you're high stress, there's going to be all different factors, genetic factors, that will determine your lung capacity. The other thing I've got to say is that this is a slow process. for the mind, but a very, very, very quick process for the universe. And that's a really important. I wish I'd understood that, 10 or 20 years ago. So what I mean by that is if you log on today to My Health TV or YouTube or wherever, and you say, that's it, I'm going to do a meditation, right? And you do it half an hour. Don't expect your mind to therefore go, woohoo, I'm amazing. I can feel the cosmic bliss. My third eye's alive. I've got my Mercedes. I've paid off all my bills. I've lost 20 kilos. The mind won't do that, because this is an instrument which you have been patterning and training for 20, 30, 40, 60 years to tell you that you're doing everything wrong, that you'll never be able to do it, that you don't have enough time, that you don't have enough money, and that you don't look good enough, and all the other things that your mind loves to habitually criticize you for. We call it the inner critic. And the world structure that we've been fooled into believing is real loves that, because that's where the divide and conquer mentality comes from. So we've actually bought into everything that the inner critic loves. So don't listen to the mind. If you do 5 minutes of meditation and your mind says, stuff that was boring, I never could do it, blah, 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 remind yourself, go, oh, something good must have happened. Because if your mind is telling you, if the inner critic's coming in, that means there's friction, that means there's growth, that means you've stepped out of your comfort zone. So I want you to remember at a soul level that whenever that inner critic comes in, if you've gone to yoga class and it hurt, you couldn't do the pose, if you went to meditate and you were thinking the whole time, if you practiced doing some breathing and it didn't feel very good and you don't think you're very good, go, oh, I must have done it the right way because my inner critic isn't happy. And if your inner critic isn't happy, that's a good sign. That's a really, really good sign. Because remember, the brain is going to tell you, nah, stuff that, don't meditate, don't do that. You'll never be good enough. Just go back to work. You've got bills to pay. No, you better get on this, do that. Forget that. Now, so when I said it takes a while for the mind to open up, it will happen, but it will take a little while. But the body will change very quickly. So you may or may not notice the physical benefits of your practice, but it will happen very, very quickly. So even if you've never done formal breath work, formal meditation, formal yoga, whatever it is before, even if someone comes and has acupuncture for the first time, they've never done it before, immediately at a cellular level, upgrades, downloads, the vibration will shift, energy will start moving. Now, does that mean that your pain will stop immediately? No, because a lot of your pain is probably manifested and habitualized through the glands in the body and through the endocrine system and through the pain receptors, through the adrenal glands, through the head, through the mind, yada, yada. So that's going to take a little while to catch up, but don't let that put you off. So you've got to have that discipline. In yoga, we often talk about discipline. You've got to have that self-discipline, not in terms of I've got to do this every day, but in terms of I am worth this practice, regardless of what my mind is telling me. So there is formal and informal tools. Meditation can be formal. So it's when we actually bring ourselves into meditation and we choose to practice for a period of time. There's also informal meditation. So if you're at home and you're cutting up the veggies for dinner, if you are in that moment, if you are looking at the cutting board, if you're imagining what it's like to be in that moment, that's informal meditation. So there's different types of meditation. Same with yoga practice. There's formal, it's done on a mat in a studio, and there's informal. If I see someone drop something at the shops and I help them to pick it up, that's devotional yoga practice, and that's my informal yoga practice for the day. So there is so much more to the world of spiritual tools than you probably even realize, and that's why don't listen to the inner critic, don't listen to the mind that tells you that you can't do yoga because you're not flexible enough, you can't meditate because you're too busy. I always tell people, if your inner critic is telling you that, it is exactly the same as saying you are too dirty to take a shower. It makes absolutely no sense. You've got to start somewhere. We're here to help you as well. So on any of our videos, you can always pop a comment below if you have a question about any of our courses or classes or any of the techniques that we discuss. We will be more than happy to reply to you. You can always send us an email. You can always jump on one of our social medias and ask us a question. We're here to help. But we've got to start getting these upgrades and downloads into the body at a regular level. Stop listening to the mind, because the mind is the one that is going to really allow the defeat mentality to come in when we talk about the spiritual battle, which is happening in 2020 right now. So the mind is the one that says, everyone's out to get me, the evil are going to win, I feel like I'm so controlled, I don't have any joy in my life. That's the mind. At a spiritual level though, we are the peaceful warriors. We are here in the moment. We have hearts open, we have third eyes open, and we're ready to connect, and we're ready to win the spiritual battle, which is going to bring us to our last little topic for episode 4, the spiritual battle.
And we've got to take our sword, you know, we've got to pick up the
Yes.
sword. We've got to know that we're capable of wielding the sword. We can't be frightened anymore. We must step into our power. You can see it as a lightsaber. You can see it as a physical sword. You can see it as Excalibur. Whatever you want that sword to be, visualize yourself right here, right now. Use the power of your third eye to see that vision of yourself picking up the sword. Feel the power. The sword can represent also the Kundalini energy rising up. You've stepped back into your true essence, your true universal power, and you are going to wield that sword, and you are going to cut away what is no longer serving your higher good. So when Greg talks about not listening to the mind, you can use the sword every time it wants to put you down, every time it's judging someone else, every time there is criticism, fear, anxiety, panic, depression, sorrow. There's nothing wrong with those energies, but if they overtake you, use your sword, cut it away. Do your simple techniques. They're not complicated, but it is about devotion and doing those techniques because you love yourself enough and you love the planet enough and you love your fellow brothers and sisters enough that you are going to be that light worker. You are going to do what it takes to step up and to do the inner work and to bypass that ever-chattering, egotistical mind that wants to take you into a state of doom and gloom, that doesn't even believe what we're saying, that you are pure ecstasy, you are pure consciousness. Well, let's just use the sword and cut away any notion that we're not the I am presence, that we are not God, goddess incarnate. We all are. And it's about time we all stood up, because if we don't, I tell you what, this battle's going to get pretty icky and we're going to see ourselves, you know, really controlled. And I just want to say, Greg, about time, because you referenced it very early on in today's chat. And as you said, you know, we have to do the work and sometimes that can take time, but also what can happen, time is an illusion. And as Greg said, the mind will perceive time, but the universe will not. So where we are in the 3D reality, we do believe in time, space, or space-time. But we can grow in consciousness where time is an illusion. Therefore, we literally can have a quantum leap of healing, and we call that a miracle. Now, what's happened is that everything has aligned energetically at that point. So I may have been carrying an illness my whole life, and then the miracle, the quantum leap takes place because I've stepped back into the truth of who I am. I've started to vibrate at such a level that the cosmos is then pouring in through my crown, and at that moment, through that heightened frequency, that childhood disease has just completely been removed, because I am no longer aspects of my past. I am no longer dragging up my memories. I'm no longer carrying on with the same story over and over again. I'm not picking at the wound of that story. I've decided to put the luggage down. I am infinite. I am pure consciousness. I am pure potential. And therefore, time at that point is irrelevant, because it didn't take any time. It happened in a moment. And so this is sometimes where Greg and I will talk about paradoxes. Yes, do the work. In our reality of 3D human stuff could take time. In another reality, it happened in a moment as soon as you stepped into your power.
That's exactly right. It's also about acknowledging that as humans, we do have a role to play on the planet. We do have a role to play in the solar system, in the galaxy. We actually are here for a reason. And I think this is one question which has plagued our consciousness probably since we started walking on two legs, or since the ego was developed in the not so distant past. But that question, which kind of ticks over and over, going, well, what's the meaning of life? What's the point of life? And when you look at how we've been trained to operate these days, there's very little time for pondering. There's very little time for hypothesizing, dreaming, imagining, thinking, wondering. In fact, we've now become so addicted to our busy life, that busy, and I've talked about this with friends for years, so if you know me, then you'll know that this isn't anything new for me, but busy is a synonym for successful. And as soon as I started realizing that, I thought, hang on, this is really interesting. And again, if you know me, you'll know that this is, I've chose a few years ago to erase that connection. So if you meet me and say, how was your year? How's your clinic? Is your clinic busy? How's the studio? Is the studio busy? Is your teacher training busy? I won't necessarily say, no, it's not busy, but I'll immediately flip that into more powerful language, more accurate language, and say, I have exactly the right amount of patients that I need. Now, there are some days where I only have a handful, and there's some days where I have many more. However, busyness doesn't necessarily have to mean successful. And one of the issues I have with the fool of being busy, or the falling into the trap of thinking that busy is successful, is that we then all of a sudden think, well, we don't have enough time to meditate, time to do yoga. We don't have enough time to sit outside on the porch and look up at the stars. We don't have enough time to just sit there over a glass of wine with a friend and chat and chat and chat. No, what we have to do now in order to be successful is to be busy. So I've got to be there with my phone and have 45 emails coming in. Oh, there's the glass of wine I ordered. I better take a photo of it and put it on Instagram. Oh, but then another Snapchat came through, so I'm going to check that. And I've actually got anxiety, so I've got to make sure I go to the doctor tomorrow because this anxiety won't go away. And then what happens if I can't do that repayment for my mortgage tomorrow? So I've got to make sure I do that extra hour. Can I get the overtime? Oh, what did you say? No, go away. I don't have enough time. And it sounds like a joke.
It's true.
But that is so many people in today's society. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person and that you're doing the wrong thing. I've been guilty of doing that even recently, and I probably will in the future. So it's not about saying, okay, I just have to take my shoes off and get a tiny home and live in the jungle. Cool. I actually would love to do that. But you don't have to. You can still participate in society, but just be aware of it and just go, hang on, am I really falling into that trap of being busy? And someone said to me years and years ago, she was teaching us about organization and having a diary and being organized. And one of the things that I loved about this was she said, give everything a color in terms of what you're doing. So, and I do this with my diary. So I've got the My Health color, I've got my clinic color, I've got social, family time. And for her, she said, make a color that appeals to you and have it every day in a big block, but it has to be space time. And you can call it what you want, free time. And so I do this. And when I talk to people about how I arrange my time and how I use my time, because you can hear people say all the time, I don't have enough time. We all have the same amount. I will schedule in time. Now, look, admittedly, these days, I don't have to be this pedantic about it because I really just trust and I just go with what feels right, and it always ends up being perfect. But back when I was learning how to create more time for rituals, I'd schedule it in. So if someone said, hey, do you want to meet for breakfast on Sunday morning? I go, sorry, I've got something on. I didn't need to tell them that what I have on was 3 hours of doing absolutely nothing, sitting on the couch with the dogs. But me actually scheduling that in allowed me as a human who had to be busy to that excuse to say, no, I can't, I've got something on. And over time, I learned that actually the more downtime I allowed myself, the more free I felt and the more time I had to imagine, to dream, to wonder. So what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? Look, we're not here to tell you what that is, but I can tell you what is it. And the meaning of us being humans, and there's no question about this, is absolutely not to go to school and then get our degree, to work for however long, 40 or 50 years, just until we've got a certain amount of money, which is controlled for us in some government-controlled account, that we can then withdraw so that we just have enough money to play golf, go on a cruise, and then hopefully have a little bit of time before we have to do chemotherapy or Alzheimer's treatment or whatever it is that's wrong with us before we pass over. Nothing wrong with that journey. That's a beautiful human journey. But is that the meaning of life? Is that the meaning of life? I'll leave that with you. Personally, for me, it's not. As a human on this planet, I think one of our greatest experiences that we can have is to have true connection, exciting conversations, to spend a lot of time in the inner child state. So that's playfulness, joy, fun, abundance, interaction, creativity, romance, nature. So all of those beautiful qualities. Now that might not appeal to you. You might be like my husband who just loves sitting behind the computer all day, but at the same time, he also loves nature, creativity, passion, those types of things. So it doesn't mean that you can't work behind a computer. It doesn't mean that you can't be really driven and run a successful business. That's absolutely right. But just remember that you have to create time to be human and first really have a think about for you what it means to be on the planet. Is it just to hit a certain amount of dollars in the bank account? Is it just to get that job? Is it just to lose the weight so you can take that one photo or get your perfect handstand so that then you feel like you're a perfect yogi? Doesn't matter what it is, but that's something that which we can meditate on, because only then can we hold our sword of spiritual battle, if you like, and then know that the paradox of wielding this sword is that it never has to be used. And that's the true essence of our spiritual battle, is that it's not about fighting back. It's not about hurting anyone. And it's not even about threatening and saying, don't come near us because we've got a sword. No, it's not about that at all. In fact, the true power comes from just owning your energy. And if that for you is the image of Excalibur with the sword, or I'm a bit of a Disney fan, so Prince Philip, who famously in Sleeping Beauty cut through all of those jungle, weeds and thorns to get to Sleeping Beauty. It's the same thing. You just have that manifestation, you have that image, you have that metaphor, if you like, and that's all you need. You only need to have the power. You don't need to turn it into force. So it's about owning your power, because again, even if we are the 99% without the money, that's a heck of a lot of people. And once we stand in our power, once we really embrace our potential, once we get into these spiritual practices, wake the third eye up, start to feel the joy of movement again. Notice how everything at the moment is about stay home, stay indoors, sit down, get behind the computer, use your devices. Everything's about being stuck. There's no prana flow in the body. We've got to start twisting and spiraling and bending and stretching and opening up the chest. It feels so good. Now, it might not feel good straight away, because if you've been sitting down for 40 years, you're going to feel a bit stiff. That's okay. Don't listen to the inner critic. Even if you just move a little bit a day to start off with, that's all the body needs. But it's got to have that circulation. Again, wearing masks, staying indoors, don't go to the beach, don't go to the park. No, I said this to Carrie Ann the other day. It's funny how the liquor shop was open the whole time during lockdown, but there was a lot of other businesses that were closed. We don't want oxygen coming into the body. Stuff it. We've got to get that oxygen coming in. Movement, oxygen, vitamin D from the sunshine, physical connection with other people. We know that hugging other people releases oxytocin, which is the counter hormone to our adrenaline that depletes everything from the body. So we want oxytocin. Now, if someone's coughing and spluttering and sneezing, probably give them a Reiki hug rather than a physical hug, but that's common sense. You don't need that printed on a poster or shoved on your phone on an app, unless that's really what you choose to do, but it's common sense. So we need that connection. We need to get outside. We need to move. Don't allow yourself to fall into the trap of thinking that we are so fragile and timid and we're so scared and we're so easily broken that we've basically got to turn into hermits. That's not what life is about, and it can't be what life is about.
Everyone right here, right now, stand up and say, yell it out to the cosmos, I take my power back. Do it 3 times. I take my power back. I take my power back. Feel the magnetic qualities of saying that, vocalizing it, using the strength of your throat chakra. The spoken word is all powerful. And even if you want to do some energy work, gather the energy in, feel it come back into your energy field. Hold your sword, hold your power. You are the light. You incarnated at this particular time for a very higher and potent reason. You are part of the light brigade, and you are required right now to stand in your power, to be one of those spiritual warriors, one of those spiritual leaders, one of those rainbow children who came here to remind not only yourself, but whoever's in your orbit, that we deserve peace, love, freedom, that we are not going to acquiesce to these disgusting control measures that are being put upon us. We are all going to say, with our hearts open, with the coherence of our third eye to our heart, we are not having it. We are not having it.
Not happy, Jan.
We are rising up.
Absolutely. To finish off, there's always going to be the inner critic that comes in and says, but what about me? And the inner critic, you've got to, so for those of you out there that are still in that mind of, yeah, but you don't understand, Carrie, you don't understand, Greg, my anxiety or my depression or my asthma, my pain is very common at the moment, particularly back pain is common at the moment. Think about it. What are we doing at the moment? We're all sitting down a lot. A lot of us are eating and drinking things which aren't from the earth. They're not whole foods, and they're not clear liquids that are going to help the body and help at a cellular level. And not only that, but we're actually trying to push our energy down when our kundalini, our spiritual energy, wants to lift up. So of course there's going to be stagnation, severe pain. There's going to be problems. Don't let the inner critic tell you that you can't own your power because you're too big, too small, too sick, whatever it is. At a physical level, blah, forget about it. You know, we have teacher trainees and we have students who are in hospital. We have teachers and facilitators who are currently going through chemo and they can barely move. We have yogi students who are quadriplegics. It doesn't matter at a physical level. That's their experience. But at an energetic level, the practice is exactly the same. So what I say to you is just be aware, if the inner critic comes in and tries to say, oh, well, that's well and good, but you don't understand. I've got this debilitating pain and I've got epilepsy or I've got anxiety or I've got what it is, then that's you. That's absolutely fine. We are not criticizing you. We're not taking that away from you. However, you can step out of that mode to do your spiritual practice. You don't have to be in that 3D body 24 hours a day. I don't pretend to say that that's going to be easy. We all have our own journeys. I've got my own physical journey. Carrie-Anne's got her physical journey, and we don't get into that because it's not relevant. But for you, take some time to step out of that. However you can get comfortable, get comfortable. So if that means that you're doing this crazy, amazing vinyasa practice, awesome. If that means that you're in a bed with the fireplace on, surrounded by pillows, with the cat on your lap, awesome. It doesn't matter. But step out of the physical body long enough, allow the inner critic to go silent long enough, even if you can only do it for a couple of minutes to start off with, to say, okay, I recognize that I'm currently going through these physical symptoms. But that can also be energy movement. That can be the release of meridians that have been stagnant. That could be pain currently leaving the body. That could be due to something that you've eaten, something that you're drinking, your genetics, your environment, chemical pollution in the body. There are so many reasons that that could be happening. It doesn't mean that you have to suffer, that you're stuck like that you're always going to be like that. It also doesn't mean that you have to listen to me, or you have to listen to what your friend said, or what they said on Facebook, or what your doctor said, or what your specialist said. Do what's right for you. But the only thing that we urge you to do is step out of the physical body, the 3D matrix, long enough to give your soul a little bit of relief, to give your spiritual body a little bit of relief, because there will be a time when you say, I can actually see that there's more to life than suffering. And that's something that I bought into. And of course, the more that you buy into it, the more it's going to layer on you. That's the law of physics. We talk about science at the moment. We've got to start separating modern science and true science. So when we talk about science as a paradigm, there's different science explanations. And a lot of people say, well, I come from a science background. If you're talking about modern science, last century, couple of centuries, if you're talking about research, last 50 years, maybe 70 years of research. If you're talking about, it came from my doctor.
Controlled research too, Greg.
That is, control. It's correct. Look at who wrote the degree. Look at who paid for the research. I'm not saying that's wrong, but we need to call that modern science. And then we have what we call quantum physics, quantum science, or true science. And that's where the universal laws come in. We can't argue with the universal law. We can definitely argue with research, and it drives you crazy doing it, but we can't argue with a universal law. So the universal law is that if you can step out of that 3D matrix, if you can step back into a soul being and do the spiritual work, amazing effects will start to ripple out, that butterfly effect.
Ascending to the 5D, that's what we're all collectively doing. It's exciting times.
Waking up.
One of our beautiful graduates, Jessie, wrote us an email after the last podcast that we did, and she talked about the cocooning effects, that when we're feeling low, and we can reframe even when we're feeling low physically, emotionally, if we're in a cocoon, and as you said, the butterfly effect, so we're breaking out of that cocoon into being the butterfly, into the 5th dimensional being. Well, of course it's going to feel uncomfortable. We've got to release the shackles. We've got to move out of that cocoon state. So thank you, Jessie. You summed it up absolutely beautiful. And big shout out to everyone that has been messaging us, emailing us, letting us know, how much you're getting out of these podcasts. Please keep letting us know, because we can get busy doing, we've got so many other arms too. Oh,
Very
I said busy, didn't I, Greg?
Busy.
Quick.
No, but this is it.
Thank me.
You are
we can
allowed
get productive.
You are allowed to
We can
use
get
the
productive.
word busy. You're allowed to use the word busy. This is the interesting thing. Some people say, oh, don't say busy to Greg. He hates that word. No, I think it's a true word. I agree with the word busy, but
We can
just
get
remember,
excited
we
in
are
our other
productive.
areas.
Busy isn't successful though. So for us, you know, we never want to get to the stage, particularly with My Health as a spiritual business, we never want to get to the stage that we're too busy to do something. So busy often means that you've put too much on your plate and you're not taking enough time to just have space. So for me, if I send an email and there's a couple of spelling mistakes and then I forget to follow up with someone and then then I go, hang on, I've put too much on my plate because I'm busy. So therefore I'm not getting everything done. I don't have, you know, the peaceful vibration. But you can definitely use the word busy. That's absolutely fine.
Oh, darling, we're just so productive. But yes, let us know.
Productive is a great word.
If you want more podcasts, of course, we love doing it. It's just like Greg and I having a good old chit chat, and we get a lot out of it as well.
I must finish by saying there's a lot going on at the moment. Holy dooly, I think every podcast that we do, the energy, the spiritual battle, the downloads, the upgrades, everything is just getting more and more intense. Having said that, I'm operating at an anxiety scale of about 0 at the moment. I think the more it gets hectic outside, of course, I do meditate more than I usually do. Usually it's about 30 minutes a day. At the moment, I'm doing 3 meditations a day. Yes, I have the luxury of the time to do that, but it didn't happen overnight. I make that a priority. So there might be some social engagements I miss. There might be some work things I miss. For me, that is my priority because I know that if I don't put me first at the moment, the risk is that I'll lose that connection to the earth, my groundedness, and I'll start to believe that the energy playing out there is actually real. So now, because I feel so calm, because I feel so grounded, I can flick on the news and just go, oh, that's an interesting narrative. You know, so today it's a cyber attack and now there's a new pandemic and there's the old pandemic and then we're all going to lose all our money and then there's, you know, natural disasters happening and this and this and this. Cool, there's the narrative, close the computer and it's gone. Whereas if I don't meditate, as soon as I open the computer, then I go, oh my gosh, what's happening? And I allow that vibration to come in. So we're in a Mercury retrograde. There's a lot happening astrologically. There's shifts within what we call the hertz of the earth, the vibration frequency of the earth, known as the Schumann resonance. There is so much going on. There's planetary alignments. Plus we've got the spiritual battle. Yes, we've got people who are in a state of fear and anxiety. All of this is happening. What can we do? Just take care of you. That's all you need to do. Take care of your beautiful soul, your inner child, your own heart, your own life. Even if you have someone that you're living with, that you're looking after, even if you're a nurse and you're working in hospitals, even if you're a mum and you've got young children, yes, you need to take care of them. But you've got to put your mask on first before you can put it on someone else. And I'm talking about the mask on an airplane. I'm not talking about a paper mask that's not going to do anything. So you know that when you're flying, if you're lucky enough to hop in an airplane these days, and the safety demonstration comes on, it says, put the oxygen mask on first before you put it on someone else. And that's a true metaphor, isn't it? You've got to get the prana into yourself first before you can give it to someone else. So
that's true love, isn't it?
It's true love. So put yourself first. The only way that you're going to get through this spiritual battle unscarred, and there might be a couple of pretty scars, that's okay, but you're going to get through it. We're here to help you, but you've got to put yourself first. So if you haven't yet started a spiritual practice, and that sounds like a very serious term, it doesn't have to be. Take your shoes off and go for a walk outside. Say, no, I'm not going to go meet my friends for a wine on Friday night. I'm going to spend an hour reading a book on astrology or on Reiki or on healing, or I'm going to jump on My Health TV and do a class, or I'm going to sit down and watch a candle and breathe for half an hour. Just do something which aligns with your spiritual energy. That's your spiritual practice. And over time, you will really notice some amazing, amazing benefits from that. So I think we're going to wrap it up there.
Yep. Trust everyone. Trust in yourself. Trust when you're having that downtime. That does not mean you're not going to have huge success. You'll have even greater success by filling your own cup first. Trust me.
Yep.
I've done it. My business is 22 years old and I know it works. I'm here to attest to it.
You're never too dirty to take a shower, and your phone is never too empty to be charged up. And it's exactly the same with the body, whether you're looking at the adrenal system, whether you're looking at prana, whether you're looking at energy, whether you're looking at illnesses. You know, you never say, well, I'm too sick for the medicine. It doesn't work that way. So you've got to put yourself first. You've got to make sure that you're filling your own cup at the moment. And the more the energy is intensified outside, the more that law applies. So if you find at the moment that you're crying more than normal, one day you're really happy, one day you're really sad. If you're finding that everyone's communication doesn't seem to be working, you're fighting with people, that's normal because of all the huge shifts that are happening, that downloads, the upgrades. But you will find so much more peace, joy, abundance, happiness, creativity, passion, love, connection comes into your life when you put yourself first. We love you guys. Mwah. Our
Love you
My Health
all.
World
Mwah.
family. We'll be back for episode 5 too. If you have anything that we need to chat about, make sure you pop it in one of the comments, or if you are watching us on a podcast or on Spotify, please do us a favor and comment on there, because the more that you comment and subscribe, the more other people will be able to see it as well. Share it with your friends. We want to get the word out there so we can help more people. But we love you guys. We send you blessings and love. Namaste.
Namaste.
My Health World. My Health World.
Health world. Party time. I mean, namaste.
Namaste.